Welcome to Writing Your Resilience, a podcast for writers who want to create stories that change lives, especially their own. I'm your host, Lisa Cooper Ellison. As a writer and trauma-informed writing coach, I'm here to guide you on a transformative journey through the art of writing, self-discovery, and resilience. Each week, I'll share my best tricks, tips, and strategies to help you write more authentically, craft deeper, truer stories, and overcome the common storytelling roadblocks we all face. Together, we'll explore how to bounce back when life gets tough and stay connected to your inner calling. So grab your pen, your notebook, and an open heart. It's time to do the work that changes the world, one story at a time. Have you ever dismissed your feelings, discounted your writing wins, or told yourself you should feel differently about your writing projects? If so, you might be gaslighting your writing practice. Join me on today's episode as I discuss what gaslighting is, how it shows up in our writing lives, and most importantly, how you can stop doing it. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to 2025. This is the first episode of season 5, which is how I am launching into the new year. I am so grateful to be with you today, and I am so grateful for all of you who have been listening all along. Thank you so much for being here. You have no idea how grateful I am for your presence and your support. It just means so much to me. And if this is the first episode that you're listening to, I want to welcome you aboard. I am so glad that you've decided to join us. This is going to be a banner year. This is something I've been hearing over and over, which means it's going to be a year of a lot of change. And that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be all bad, but anytime change is happening, it's going to get a little uncomfortable. So that's what we are going to talk about today. In order for us to talk about how to gaslight-proof your writing process, we need to know what gaslighting is and how we tend to gaslight ourselves. That's something we call self-gaslighting. So we're going to talk about those things to make sure we have a shared understanding of this topic. And then we're going to look at how does that show up in our writing lives? What does it look like specifically so that we can begin to catch ourselves when it's happening? And then I'm going to share 4 tools that you can use to gaslight proof your writing practice. And if you want even more tools, you can download a copy of my Write More, Fret Less toolkit, and you will get so many different tools you can use to help you build a sustainable, wonderful, and I'm going to say joyful writing practice in 2025. All right, so let's begin with the word gaslighting. You hear it everywhere, and it is used incorrectly so many times. So let's be really clear about what it is. So, gaslighting is an intentional form of manipulation that is often used by narcissists in order to control other people. And so, what happens when you are gaslit by someone is that they are devaluing your experience. They're telling you not that you're wrong, but that what you think is happening is not what's actually happening. So, you begin to discount your feelings and your experiences. Some words that are often used in conjunction with this are crazy making. When someone gaslights you, they make you feel crazy. And this is very different from someone disagreeing with you, right? Someone can disagree with you all day long and they are not gaslighting you, even if it makes you really angry and you don't like what they have to say. When you feel gaslit, you feel crazy. Okay, so that's the feeling state that happens. And so certain people are more vulnerable to experiencing this. So if you are in an abusive relationship with someone, especially someone who is a narcissist, or you come from an invalidating environment where love was really conditional, you're more likely to gaslight yourself or to be susceptible to gaslighting. And so if that's your experience, all you need to do is just own it and say, oh, yeah, I need to be really gentle with myself and I need to have a lot of awareness around what's happening. Because this happens a lot for trauma survivors. And what trauma survivors do is that they get in these experiences, and especially if you have the fawning trauma response, which is an automatic trauma response that looks like people pleasing, you have frozen in some way in order to survive, and then you beat yourself up for it. So let's not do that. Okay, so let's just build some awareness and a lot of love for ourselves around these things. Because what often happens when we are in these experiences, and anyone can get into this kind of experience. If you want to learn more about this, I highly recommend you listen to the episode that I did with Dr. Ramani Durvasula. She is incredible. You need to get her book, It's Not You, Identifying and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. These are just incredible tools that will give you a deep dive into this, which we're not going to do today. But if you want to learn more, that's where I want you to go. But for now, I want you to hold on to this definition so that we can talk about what self-gaslighting is. So, when we are self gaslighting ourselves, we are discounting our own experiences. We are minimizing our frustrations. We are telling ourselves how we feel isn't how we should feel. And we have expectations of ourselves that are just unhealthy and damaging. And it's so easy, again, to do this, especially because of how our world works. And I'll talk about that in a moment so that you can get a sense of why are these things happening more today than perhaps they were happening in the past? Though it's not like it didn't happen in the past, but it's happening more now. So before we get to that, let's talk about what happens specifically in your writing practice. So, what does self gaslighting look like in your writing process? One of the biggest things that I watch writers do is they discount the process. So many writers come to writing, especially later in life, and they are smart and they are capable and they are extremely expressive and creative. And they expect themselves to get an A plus and be able to whip something out extremely quickly with very little effort. And so when they do run up against feedback that they don't like, or they have rejections, or it just takes a lot longer than they expect, they feel like there's something wrong with them. And so then they begin to beat themselves up like, oh my gosh, I should be able to do this. Why is this so hard? Why isn't this working for me? Well, the reality is that writing is a craft. It is an art form that takes a long time to learn and to master. And so I often use this analogy to help people build some gentleness around this process. So let's do that right now. So, we are people who are in cars all the time, many of us, right? We drive cars, we might ride in cars. And so we feel really comfortable being in and around a car. And like we know how cars work. And that is what it's like to read or to speak or send an email. And yet to be a storyteller, which is what you're doing when we talk about creative writing, whether that's memoir or a narrative nonfiction book, or you are, writing a novel, you are creating and you are being a storyteller. And when you are a storyteller, it's like you are becoming a master mechanic, right? So you can't just know how to drive a car. You need to know how to rebuild the engine, rebuild the carburetor, diagnose something inside the engine that isn't working. And most of us don't come to the table with those skills. And that's okay. We just haven't been taught those skills yet. And so that's why it takes a long time and it takes a lot of practice, because you are learning to be a master mechanic of the storytelling process. And you just need to embrace that. Though I will be the first to admit it is a lot harder to do than it is to say, especially when the ego gets involved, right? And the ego gets involved in the next part, which is minimizing both our frustrations and our triumphs. So when it gets hard and we are, giving it our all and just not getting where we want to go, we can do two things that are self gaslighting. We can minimize our triumphs and, like, well, I got this draft done, but I really should have published it already. Or, I got this publication and it feels really good, but it wasn't in the New York Times. So maybe it's not good enough, right? So these are the ways we discount our experience, we discount our triumphs. We can also, on the other hand, discount the frustrations we have that are very normal parts of the human experience. It's hard when you are working on something and you're not making the progress you hope to make, when distractions come in that keep you from being with your writing, or when you just can't figure out what the next step should be. All of that can be really difficult. But when you see other people online having what looks like easy success, and especially if it looks like easy overnight success and everybody's smiling and people aren't talking about how difficult it is, it can give you the false sense that no one else is frustrated. You're the only one that's frustrated, and you must put on the brave face and see this in a calm, Zen way all the time. And you must be able to have the very thickest of skins in order to not have someone's feedback penetrate you. Okay, that is BS. That is not what's happening for most writers. We are sensitive creatures who have lots of big feelings about what's going on, and it's okay if you have them too. You're not doing it wrong. Two other ways that we tend to self gaslight ourselves is one, we discount our creative intuition. So let me define what I mean by creative intuition before I talk about how we discount it. So we all have an inner knowing about what our story is supposed to be about, even when we don't fully know exactly where we need to go. Some part of us has this perfect vision of what it should look like. And what can happen is that we get feedback, perhaps from someone else, maybe even an editor like me, that says, well, there are these rules, there are these things that you need to pay attention to. And yes, you do need to pay attention to those things. But what we do is we over rely on that feedback and that affirmation, right? That's really what we're looking for. I want you to tell me I'm doing a good enough job. I want you to tell me that my work is good. I want you to tell me I'm doing it right. And we keep looking for that. And what if someone is giving you their very best feedback, but that feedback doesn't align with your vision? Many, many writers will discount their own inner knowing in order to please whoever their reviewer is. And so there may be times when it's okay for you to make those choices, right? There are times when someone gives me feedback. I've had editors say, oh, I'd like you to go in this direction. And then I pause and I check in and say, oh, that's not what I originally envisioned, but am I okay with this change? And if the answer is yes, great, go in that direction. It's not to say that you don't take that feedback in, but if there's a part of you that is really saying, I don't think so, maybe what they're telling me to do is right, but I'm not going to feel proud of what I've created because it's their idea, that is self gaslighting. Another way that we gaslight ourselves is we blame ourselves unnecessarily for rejections that pour in when we are submitting our work. And oh my gosh, rejection is so hard. And writers experience so much of it. It is just a normal part of the process. But if you've put your heart and soul into something, if it doesn't feel like, this is a story I've told, but this is my story, and then you're getting all of these rejections, it can feel like not just that your story is bad, but that you are bad. And that can really demoralize you, and it can make it feel like you just don't have what it takes. The reality of how publishing works, which is highly, highly competitive, is that there are many places where a lot of really talented writers are submitting their work, and an editor can only choose one or two pieces, or maybe three or four, depending on what this is for. But there are a limited number of slots for a lot of submissions. And so they have to reject a lot of work that's really, really good. So it could be that your work is incredible and it just hasn't found the right home. Now, does that mean you may not have times where you do need to revise your work? Of course, you may have to revise your work. It is also possible that something is just not ready, but it doesn't mean your work is wrong or bad. And it certainly does not mean that you are wrong or bad. So I want you to think about in your own writing life in the past, like 2024, how of these things have shown up for you. So I want you to think about your own writing life. Think back to 2024 and before. How did these things show up for you? And what was that like? And then as we're going into 2025, could you think of one item, and you only need to pick one, that you'd like to let go of and maybe do something different? Okay, so I want you to think about that now so that you are preparing for the process of building a sustainable gaslight-proof writing process for 2025 so that you are retuning your practice and you are refining your practice for what's ahead. And that is really important because there are all of these normal ways that we tend to self-gaslight, and they're very common. I've seen writers do this all the time. I have done all of these things as well. I am not immune to these things. But when we're thinking about a year that could be a banner year filled with change, filled with unpredictability, we have to up our game in order to make it sustainable. And so we're not going to get into politics because this is not a political podcast. This is about writing, and I want to stick within my lane. But what I want to talk about is the fact that anytime a lot of change is coming down the pike, it's going to disrupt your writing practice. And it's very possible that some of the changes that happen, both on a personal level and maybe on a global or national level, are going to feel like the rug has been pulled from beneath your feet. They're going to catch you off guard. They're going to surprise you. And there may be times when it feels really crazy making or it feels destabilizing and you're not sure what to do next. So that's very possible that that could happen. And again, this is something that the astrology and all kinds of other things suggest could happen in 2025. So we want to prepare for it, but it could happen at any time in your life. So, for instance, in 2023, my dad got really sick all of a sudden, and he needed this really big surgery. And it required me to take this trip that I had not planned to take to New York. And then I was gone for 6 weeks. And then I had about 6 months of my life after that that involved a lot of travel back and forth, completely unpredictable, out of my hands, out of my control. And yet I had to figure out what I was going to do with it and how I could navigate my writing life. And I want to tell you this because I think it's really important and it's really coming to me because this was something I had to face when all this was going on, is that sometimes attending to your writing life means letting go of the pressure of feeling like you have to write. Or maybe a better way to put it is letting go of the pressure to produce, right? You can write about anything at any point, and if it makes you feel alive and if it helps you navigate your stress, if it helps you make sense of what's going on around you, do those things. But in times of change and turbulence, give yourself a break. And if you produce something that is a product, great. Send it out, but don't feel like you have to do it. Give yourself permission to just be and allow your writing to do whatever it's supposed to do and unfold in whatever way it's supposed to unfold. That is going to be something that helps you build a lot of ease in your writing practice, and it's going to help you come to the page more often than not. Because when we are resisting the realities of what's happening around us, we tend to block ourselves. So, being a gaslight proof person is making a commitment to doing the work that will keep you from blocking yourself, right? That's what we're doing when we are creating a gaslight proof writing practice. We are saying, I will do the things that are needed to keep from blocking myself. So that gets into what we're going to talk about next is, what do you do if we're in a banner year and there are a lot of things going on that could be destabilizing or disruptive to your writing practice and you find yourself gaslighting yourself? What do you do about it? So there are 3 things you need to do that serve as the antidote. Number 1 is awareness. Number 2 is compassion. And number 3 is reality testing. So, the very first thing that we need to do is become aware that we're doing this. We need to notice our thoughts. So, I have revamped my Write More, Fret Less toolkit, which I have been giving out for many years. And I have added so many additional things you can use in order to build awareness around what the process of writing is really like, and also what is going on inside you. There are some recorded meditations, there are some different practices you can use, but the more you can really hear what you're thinking and saying to yourself, the more you can do something with it. So, awareness is the first step. And once you hear that you are gaslighting yourself, which can sound like, oh, you shouldn't really be feeling that way, or that triumph you think you had, or that, publication is not really that great, or oh, you won that contest. I bet they felt sorry for you. That's why they gave it to you. So when you notice that you're doing that, instead of beating yourself up, you want to give yourself compassion. And this is what it looks like for me. So I will put my hand on my heart and I go, oh, I hear that. Oh, you're hurting. It's really okay that it's scary for you to feel successful. Or, oh, you're frustrated. Yeah, I get that. This is a frustrating situation. Anybody would be frustrated in this situation. What do you need in order to not feel frustrated? So notice that I am talking to myself in a kind way. Some other things that you can do, and I will put a link for this in the show notes, is you can do metta for yourself. So when I talk about metta, this is a loving kindness meditation that you can do for yourself. And in metta, you first start with some version of yourself. Could be the version of yourself right now that's really gaslighting yourself. So you want to choose that version of yourself and send yourself loving kindness. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. So you say these things, imagining a version of yourself, and it could be that version or a younger version of yourself. Then you offer that same meditation to someone who serves as a teacher for you. I often tell people choose your pets because you generally only have positive feelings towards your pets. Don't choose your spouse. Those are more complicated relationships, or a partner that you have. But choose someone who has served as a teacher, that has only had positive regard for you and that you only have positive regard for. Then you choose someone who is neutral. Then you choose someone who is difficult. And that could be a difficult person outside yourself, or it could be a difficult part of yourself that you want to work on. And then you give it to everyone. So, this is a very systematic way that you can practice compassion for yourself and for others. Another thing you can do, which may sound a little dark, but it really works, is that if you find yourself really suffering, so maybe you've gotten a lot of rejections and you're like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to have to give up on this project, and I feel horrible about it. Right now, I feel like such a failure. Meditate on and imagine all the other people who feel this way. And in fact, if you can, find them online, right? Go to social media. This is a positive use of social media. Find those people, talk to them, normalize this experience. And as you feel connection to others, you will have compassion for them and you'll have compassion for yourself. And once you've done those things, you want to reality test the situation. You want to give yourself a reality check. So, yeah, I got rejected 10 times when I submitted this essay. I think this essay sucks. And I think that I suck. I'm really failing at this. Maybe you talk to other people or you talk to yourself about the fact that, well, there are lots of reasons why work gets rejected. And, I have the choice of getting feedback to find out if it's truly ready. I can make changes if that's necessary. And I can recognize that I could have done the very best work I am capable of doing, and that this is truly a good piece, and that just wasn't the right home. Right. So that's reality testing. You are testing reality and you are becoming clear about what is real. Because as I said in the beginning, when you are being gaslit or you are self gaslighting yourself, you are discounting your own reality. So don't do that. Okay, so now that we've talked about some of the things that serve as an antidote, let's talk about some very specific tools that you can use that will help you gaslight proof your writing process. Number one, this is the most powerful and most important thing you can do: build writing community. Whenever possible, try to have an in-person writing community, because there is something about the energy of being with other people that is very powerful. But if that's not possible for you, build it online. The next best thing is Zoom or some other form of a virtual meeting that you can belong to. And then go off to, Facebook groups or meeting with writers in other ways. So let me tell you why this is important, and then I'm going to talk a little more about how it works. So when you're a writer, you are doing something that most people do not understand. So just like you may have come to the writing process thinking, oh, I am a smart person who has been successful in many different endeavors, and I have written brilliant emails and said brilliant things to people. And then you get that reality check of like, oh, writing is a craft that takes time to learn and perfect. Other people have those same ideas. So if you are writing something and it's taking a long time, you may have wonderful friends who are just really trying to support you, who might say things like, is it done yet? Is it done yet? Is it done yet? And they are trying to love you, but it's just that they don't understand. And when you hear that over and over, it can be demoralizing. It can make you question your own reality. So, when you're working with other writers and you're in community with them, especially when you have peers that are working at the same level, you can normalize the experience for each other. And if you have a mentor, someone who is ahead of you, and that can be a formal mentor, or it can be someone you just follow online or you follow in different ways and you hear what they have to say, they can normalize the experience. Like, yeah, it does take longer. Yeah, there are setbacks. Yeah, it's hard for me. The more you hear those things, the easier it is for that to sink in. And it's going to help you feel like you're not alone in the process. So, all of those, dark, broody thoughts you have about your writing experience will dissipate, because you'll know you're not the only one. So, as I said, in person is best. And then, if that's not possible, Zoom is the next best, because you can look people in the eye. You can attend to their body language. You have a chance to really interact with someone in a way that you can't do if you're in, say, a Facebook group, or you're on Blue Sky or Twitter or any of the other platforms that are text based, because there is very little emotional context to what people put into a text, right? We can't see what they're thinking or what they're feeling. We can only intuit. And so it's better than nothing, but it's not the same as human contact. So, with eye contact, especially. So, the more you can do that, please try to seek that out. And some ways you can do that is, if there is a local nonprofit writing center in your area, just Google that and see what comes up. Try to attend some of their events, meet writers in your area. The library is another great place to meet people. You can also look at your independent bookstore in your area, or even if it's not independent, go to Barnes and Noble and see if they have readings or other events that are happening in your area, and go meet people. Be a part of those communities. Say hello to someone. I know that is so analog, but really is so helpful to your writing process. And if that's not possible, again, go to online communities, do what is possible so that you have people around you and you feel less alone. The next thing you want to do is do less. And I'm going to be the first person to say it is super hard for me to do that. And it is something that I am really trying to lean into, especially in this year. So, for 2025, usually at the beginning of the year, I'm like, what are your goals? Let's figure out how to achieve your goals. And yes, I am talking with my clients about that. I am, having classes about that. I will be having those conversations, but sometimes we don't need to just, run out of the gates as fast as we can and try to achieve, achieve, achieve. We need to make space. And anytime change is on the horizon, we want to rest as much as we can. The reason we want to rest and do less is because it makes space for what is possible. Okay. And it also helps us maintain our foundation. So if you are in do mode, right? You're just kind of going and going and going, and you're overtired, and then something pulls the rug out from underneath you, it's going to feel more destabilizing than if you have time to process it and you have been processing how you're feeling all along. So here are some questions that I want you to ask yourself. How can you go slower, especially at the beginning of this year? And how can you make space in your calendar for just rest, for wonder, for fun, for staring at the wall? How can you make space for those things? And how can you lean into the fact that things take as long as they take? I will be the first to admit that I can set unrealistic goals for how quickly I would like things to get done. And you know what? They get done when they get done. And sometimes it is quick, but there are a lot of times when it's not. And learning how to accept that is really important. So I want you to think about, how can you do less? How can you go slower? I also want you to learn the process. What does writing really look like? What is really going on for experienced writers? What's normal for writers who are new to the process? I talk about all of those things in Write More, Fret Less. So be sure to download a copy of my ebook and look through the stages of the revision process. That has been one of the most important things I have shared with people, and it helps people feel so much less stress about what they're trying to do. Also, look at the different traps we tend to get ourselves into and look at how you can get yourself out of those traps. So, that is a tool that will keep on giving all year long. So, be sure to get your copy. And the last thing I'm going to tell you to do is watch your environment. You know, there is who we are, there is what we want to expend or put out into the world. But one of the things that can really get in our way is what kind of inputs we have. And one of the most poisonous inputs that we can engage in is comparison. And social media can be just, oh my gosh, a rife playground for comparison. Because as I said earlier, you are going to see people who are looking like they're having really easy wins, or there's this way to, reach the stars as fast as possible. And in fact, it isn't just the illusion of things you see, like when your friends post about awards or publications or things like that, right? That's one thing that can trigger you into a state of comparison. But there are many ways that on these platforms, people are intentionally marketing to you in certain ways that foster that sense of comparison, that sense of urgency, and the sense that there is a quick fix and that you should be able to have some sort of magical snap your fingers success if you just follow these 5 or 6 steps. I'm calling BS on that right now, because it's not how it works. Does it work for some people some of the time? Yes. But for the majority of us, it doesn't. So don't fall into that trap. Another thing when it comes to thinking about your environment is thinking about, how much news are you consuming and how much negativity are you consuming. So that could be from the news, because let's face it, what bleeds leads, right? So most of the news that you will see out in the world is negative. And it is that way intentionally, because negative news is engaging. It keeps you in a state of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? I've got to learn more. How much of that are you bringing in? Also, think about your relationships. How often are you around people that are draining you? And it doesn't mean that they're bad people, okay? So we don't have to judge people as bad people or, put labels on them. But I want you to really think about, is this person filling me up, inspiring me, helping me think more broadly? Do I leave this conversation or this interaction excited about life, or do I feel drained? And if you are feeling drained, think about how often you want to be with that person. Doesn't mean you have to cut them out of your life. Doesn't, again, mean that you have to see them as bad. What it does mean is that you really want to protect yourself this year, and you want to make sure that the inputs that you are putting into yourself are inputs that foster expansion, right? Expansive thinking, excitement, creativity, things that foster positivity, things that help you have fun. Bring a lot more of that into your life in this year that will help you create that sustainable writing practice for yourself in a year, no matter what happens, including the fact that this is a banner, amazing year where everything works out for you and it's super smooth and life just goes on regardless of what's happening. And I do hope that that is your experience this year. I truly do. And I hope it's my experience. Oh my gosh, that's what I want. And I want to be ready regardless of what happens so that I have that strong foundation, that strong center that says, I can create, because creating is a huge part of who I am. And when I engage in who I am, when I allow myself to feel alive, then I am bringing my best version of myself to all of the things that I do. And that, my friends, is the most important thing that you can do. So I want to wrap up with two quotes by two people that I absolutely love. And the first is from Maya Angelou. You alone are enough. You have nothing to prove to anybody. And that is so very true. You do not have to write one thing. You do not have to publish one thing. You do not have to win an award to be enough. You are incredible just the way you are. And I want to say that right this moment, I am honoring that. I am honoring your enoughness. You have everything you need and you are shining, even if you cannot see it right now. I'm holding space for that and I am imagining it right now. You are shining and you are incredible. The other quote is by Brené Brown, and this is from The Gifts of Imperfection. Owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that we'll ever do. And so my hope is that over the course of this year, if you do nothing else, that you own your story and that you love yourself no matter what is happening. Because when you own your story, you own your truth and you love yourself through it, that is one of the most gaslight-proof things that you can do. So give yourself that gift as we launch and work through 2025. I am so excited about this upcoming season. The authors that I have been interviewing and the books I've been reading are incredible. I also have some amazing guests who are experts in the field of creativity and writing who are going to share their very best wisdom with you. And I have some very special people from the world of healing and mental health who are going to share wisdom that's going to take your writing practice one step further. So I look forward to sharing all of that with you in the coming months. And I look forward to hearing from you what you think about the guests that I have on, about the content that I'm sharing. And if you have an idea for me, please share it at writingyourresiliencepodcast@gmail.com or send a text to the podcast, because I listen to all of your feedback and I'm always seeking out guests that align with what you hope to hear. So that is it for this week, my friends. I look forward to walking this journey with you, and I look forward to providing you with the tips, tricks, and all of the strategies you can use to always write on. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I truly couldn't do this podcast without your support. If you love this episode, here are 3 simple ways you can keep this show thriving. 1, subscribe or follow Writing Your Resilience on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube so you never miss an episode. 2, leave a 5-star review to help others discover the podcast. 3, Join my engaged writing community by signing up for the Writing and Resilience newsletter. As a thank you, you'll receive a free copy of Write More, Fret Less, a toolkit for gaslight-proofing your writing practice. Have feedback for the show, a topic you'd love me to cover, or questions you'd like me to answer? Drop a comment on YouTube, text the show, or email me at writingandresiliencepodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, keep writing, keep growing, and keep showing up for yourself. Your story matters, and I am so proud to be writing alongside you.